holy that's Paul McCartney. So I was touring with Squeeze, but we were coming home after a gig. Chris said, you should cancel your hotel room tonight and stay with me at my place in East Sussex. Yeah. And on the way there, about 2 a.m, he had just pointed up to a street and said, hey, you never guess who lives there. And of course, I guessed it right away. Was it McCartney? He goes, yeah, well, maybe I'll call him tomorrow morning and see what they're up to. Yeah, so I'm lying in bed like, going, wow. Just imagining. Yes. Of course, in the morning, I'm up about 2 hours before him. Finally, he comes downstairs and he's like, should I call him? And I go, I mean, if you have their number, Yeah. So we called over and Linda answered the phone. And at that time, I was sort of a media darling, right. Mojos and those people. Sure. So they'd heard of me, but I don't think they'd heard my music. Okay. And so they invited us over. And Paul was already at the back door, kind of in his, going like this, the thumbs up. And I was like, holy fuck, that's Paul McCartney. And so we go in and he goes, oh, you're Ron with that. So I sit at this table. And Paul's right there. And, I'm kind of shy at first. I'm looking at my tea and they're talking. Linda sits at the end of the table and she's like, oh, you're from Canada. I'm a big fan of Gordon Lightfoot. So I'm like, oh my God, Gordon's my hero. And then it sort of brought Paul into the conversation. Right. Now I'm looking at him. The weekend before, there's no chance I would have been invited over because George and Ringo were there. And Paul, in fact, was still kind of bitching about the previous weekend because there was supposed to be a third Beatles song that George vetoed, which was Now and Then, which came out just recently. Yes. What was the problem? And he said George had an issue with the chord progression. And he goes, well, here, let me play some. So we go in the living room, puts on a song, and he's just cranking it. And I'm standing beside him, and he's singing along with his own record.
Oh, my God.
Like harmonies and things, right? So by the time I go back to the kitchen, he pulls out a guitar, and he plays me 2 brand new songs. In my mind, I go, I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah, how do you process that?
And then he goes, hey, James. He goes, James's son. He goes, why don't you get your guitar for Ron? So he brings a guitar for me. So now Paul's sitting there with his guitar and waiting for me to play something. And so I went, and he sort of looked at me first to see if I was like pulling his leg. Yeah. And I launched into it. And we did the whole song. And he's singing the harmonies. And I heard he was a big Beach Boy fan. So I let Caroline know. Yeah. And there's a weird chord in that song. And I could see that he was watching me to see if I was going to get the chord. Yeah. And when I did, he went, yes, like this. They're maybe going on for 3 hours, I think. And then we got in the car and drove away. But I don't have a camera anyway, but I would have loved to have gotten a photo, but I never did. They were really nice to me. And I think it was after that he'd said some nice things in the press.
Yeah, I haven't had a McCartney level experience like that. But I mean, it's especially being put on the spot, like here's a guitar, start playing. Like, my fingers would freeze. I don't know what I would do.